Good afternoon. This is wildlife biologist Eric Orff with New Hampshire Fish and Wildlife. This is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. I was looking through a diary from 1977, and it reminded me how things happen in New Hampshire. I think I've done some other videos how the New Hampshire wildlife biologists, which I was one for close to 30 years, have helped return and restore numbers of wildlife that have not been here since before colonial times. Turkeys and bear and deer and moose and bald eagles, peregrine falcons, all these things, terns down the coast, all I've worked on. But I'd forgotten about some of the other things I did before I became a wildlife biologist in the fall of 1978. I actually started out in the fall of 1976 as a fisheries bioaid, and then in 78 became a fisheries biologist. So in 1977, this kind of struck me. You know, we all think, well, gee, for the bass fishermen, there's hundreds of bass tournaments every year, and we all like to fish for, not only bass, but trout. Of course, Fish and Game, thanks to the hard work at our hatcheries, raise 1 million trout to be released, I think, a year. But it's not just trout that have been stocked in New Hampshire. And here's my records from May 6th, 1977. It shows that we went to the Rochester Reservoir in Rochester, which is the water supply for the town, and it's closed to the public to fishing. So what did we do there? We set out, let's see, I actually made a map of it. We set out 8 different traps to catch fish. And what we do with those fish? I took 67 smallmouth bass and released them in Pawtuckaway Lake. So Fish and Game, why do we have bass in our lakes in New Hampshire? Fish and Game staff stocked them. They didn't show up out of nowhere. They were decades and decades, 50 years of stocking bass and other fish to restore or increase populations of fish around the state. In fact, I also note here that I took 71 pickerel, eastern chain pickerel, and released them in Kimball Pond. So later that day I took pickerel to release elsewhere. So the Fish and Game Department has spent decades not only monitoring our fish populations, and one of the things we did, I worked with Stuart or Twink Merrill for a couple of summers, and we would go around and place nets in the lake and sample what kind of fish were there, and based on what we sampled, we would know if some lakes needed to be have a stocking of certain fish, whether it's bass or pickerel. I remember I stocked golden shiners, and then so lots of different fish were moved around by the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department staff to produce the fishing we all now take for granted around the state, and it's no doubt still happening. Of course, the more in the news has always been the brook trout and trout fishing. That's where fish are stocked across the state, and salmon fishing on the bigger lakes. So a lot of the fishing that we enjoy today didn't happen unless the Fish and Game Department staff stocked the trout and the salmon and the bass and the pickerel that we now all enjoyed. Hey, just thought you wanted to know.